Hey everybody, so I wanted to make sure that you guys were all caught up by the time we went ahead and got back to focus next week online, so that you guys are at the same point. So what I wanted to make sure you guys understood is what to do with your recorded interview audio. Well, eventually what you guys are going to be doing is making your own podcast based on the interview that you did. So say for instance, I was interviewing Mr. Heffelbauer, and he was interviewing me. I would be in charge of my podcast, at least would be about the interview that I did with Mr. Heffelbauer. Therefore, my podcast would be about Mr. Heffelbauer. Now, the podcast, again, the requirements are 2 to 3 minutes in length, right? And really, if you want to think about your podcast, you can do some of the things that or at least that we saw in some of the other podcasts. For instance, you can, do some intro music. If you want to get creative with it, maybe like an introductory ad, maybe some outro music. You might even want to use your voice as kind of like a narration. So for instance, you might want to go ahead and say something like, hey everybody, welcome. My name is Mr. Snyder, and I had the opportunity to interview Mr. Heffelbauer, and here's what happened. And then you play parts of your audio from the interview, right? So you can put this together however you like. So that part is up to you, but I ask that again it be between 2 to 3 minutes in length. Now, my hope is that your actual raw interview lasts much longer than that. So you're really just taking the best parts from that interview, boiling it down and putting it into a nice, digestible podcast for us to listen to. Again, 2 to 3 minutes long. So what I need you to do, though, before we get to class back next week when we're kind of joining classes, we're going online, is to make sure that everybody has their audio. At least the interview audio, so that they can really get started on making their podcast. Now, you're going to find yourself in one of a couple different situations. The first situation would be, say, for example, I did the interview. Let's say just this audio is the audio that I had, recorded from me and Mr. Heffelbauer's interview. And we also interviewed each other, right? So there's also his audio in this as well when he interviewed me. So what I would need to do is, send him over the audio so that he can, access my interview, right? So I already have obviously all the interview here, like my interview for him and his interview for me, but he just needs the audio so he can start playing with it in Soundtrap as well. So what I am going to do is I am going to bounce him that audio. Now, what I am going to do that is I'm going to go over here to File. I'm going to go to Export. I'm going to export it as an MP3. Now, if you have a paid subscription, you could do the WAV format. And the WAV format's actually better because that actually doesn't condense or compress your audio at all. It just gives you the raw, like full sound of the actual audio file. But again, you have to pay for that, so we're not trying to pay anything. So we're going to export this project as an MP3 file. When you do that, it'll just start your download, right? You're going to take that file and you're going to email that over to your partner, and you're going to want to do that before class, the next time you have class, either that being Monday or Tuesday next week. So that's like option one. That would be like for a person who, the audio went well when you guys did the sit-down interview or remote interview. That is how I'd like you to do that. Now, option number two is maybe you guys interviewed each other separately on different calls so that, you were controlling the audio for your interview, right? And if that's the case, you already have your audio, so you don't need to send the audio to someone else, especially if they don't need that interview. So that's option two. Option three would be, and this is very important, would be the people that emailed me saying like, yeah, the audio did not work. There was too much echo, too much feedback, that kind of thing. So I guess, well, what do I do? And if that's the case, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to do, in class, what you want to do is I would have sent you out to the hall and actually just record it on your iPhone. But what you're going to want to do, because again, we're remote now and we're virtual, is you're going to want to do the following thing. You're going to want to probably, and this is what I think would work best, unless of course you want to try the remote interview again, is send the questions over. They already have the questions from the Google Doc, and have the other person just record their answers to the questions in full, right? Just like they would have done in the interview. Now, when you're doing that, just record it onto your phone, go to a quiet place, right? And then just share the audio from that recording. So for iPhones, I know that they have, the voice memo. Android, I'm sure, has a similar app on the phone. So you can just record yourself talking the answers, and then just send those answers to your partner, and vice versa, right? And they're gonna also answer your questions, right? And then send you the audio of their answers, right? Now, you might want to, have your voice, asking the question in the actual podcast, right? But you'll be able to do that narration or record that audio later in the program itself. So just to get the answer audio, so you can use that for your podcast, that's what I would highly recommend. So in summary, if your audio is messed up and you need to do it over again, and you don't want to do it remotely via Soundtrap, what I'm going to recommend you do is record the answers to your the interview questions on your phone, and then just send that to your partner, and vice versa, so that you guys can get started on this podcast. So you're either at option 1, 2, or 3. I'd ask that you'd go ahead and do whatever I asked you to do, depending on, again, who you are or where you're at in this podcast thing. And then, for the most part, what I want you to have when you come to class, either on Monday or Tuesday next week, is to have the audio for the interview that you conducted in front of you in Soundtrap, so that we can talk about, breaking it down, some options for how to format your podcast, maybe some questions you might have about editing the audio, that kind of stuff, and we can answer that during class on, again, Monday or Tuesday. So if you could get that to that point, at least, if you guys want to start playing with, editing and cleaning up the audio already, that's totally up to you, but you don't have to necessarily get that all done by class Monday or Tuesday, okay? So that is my directions for you. If you have any questions, again, shoot me an email, and I'll try to help you out, okay? You guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys online next week. All right, bye.